Anyway, welcome back to Games by Design. I'm Deus.
I'm Rage.
And I'm Suda.
Last week we were talking about recreating the game review world, looking at a different way to do this that isn't necessarily so negative positive and more about an approach towards it where we can reveal the information about the game in an easy to digest way to make it actually able for you to figure out what a good game is, what isn't, and not only that, but what you would want to play. Because as we were talking about last time, just because it's a good game doesn't mean it's going to be a game you enjoy, and just because it's a game you enjoy does not necessarily make it a good game.
Very, very true. For instance, for me, Stardew Valley. That game is absolutely wonderful. It's an amazing game. Not really the game that I want.
Whereas Pookie and I played the hell out of it. We loved that game. We had spreadsheets for seed costs that breaks down how much profit you're going to make on first grow, shows you profit on subsequent grows, takes into account time. Yeah, we went all out on that game.
Very, very good game. Not for me, though.
So today we're thinking we're going to grab some of our favorite games here and actually do some reviews. Look at how good they really were, and once we're done with these reviews, hopefully we'll be able to take them and throw them up on our wiki and start generating a list of game reviews so that you as the viewer can go and check out exactly what we thought of all these different games. Go ahead, Tudo.
No,
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, so for a quick review, our previous efforts came down to gameplay, audio, video, and writing. Writing's never been a part of it. I don't know why. Writing's super important to games. Borderlands wouldn't even be a game without writing. It would just be a trash pile.
a trash pile full of loot.
Yeah, I love a trash pile full of loot, sure, but still a trash pile. But the writing makes the game though. In gameplay, the most important elements, the distilled elements of gameplay is, mechanic cohesiveness I still think is odd, but it is kind of important. How well do the mechanics play to each other?
I think maybe we need a better way of describing that, but I think it is important to talk.
Yeah, agreed. But hopefully maybe somebody will pop in and go, that's a weird word, you should use this. Yeah, that'd be
And
great.
then we will know better.
Yeah, we're totally open to chat input all the time. The other core aspects of your game is control. Nobody can argue this. Control is super important when you're playing a game. How much RNG is there in the game? And we're not saying RNG makes a game good or bad, but on a competitive front, you want less RNG. You want it to be about your skill, not about your luck. How many bugs there are in the game, and or does it have major game-breaking bugs? And accessibility features. Accessibility features is not only modes for color blindness, but also the ability to invert XY so that backwards brains like mine can actually play it.
Turns out that's pretty important.
Yeah, I don't remember what game it was I went to play, but they didn't have that, and every time I went to look down, I looked up. Every time I went to look up, I looked down. About 15 minutes into playing it, I was like, no, I'm done. I can't do this. My brain hurts. I literally had a headache from trying to reverse my thoughts while playing. On the audio side, sound effects. That's your gunshots, when you jump on the 50 cal gun and start firing it, your chest starts just rattling and vibrating. Yeah, that's wonderful. Voice acting. And we talked a lot about that. It doesn't have to be amazing voice acting, but it has to be consistent and it has to be intentional. You can have bad voice acting as long as you wanted bad voice acting and you wrote the game accordingly. And musical score, which is just your soundtrack. Every game needs a good soundtrack. Sound is important. Even no sound can be a good soundtrack depending on the moment, but sound is important.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that From Software, for instance, does very, very well, is knowing how to use silence to build tension.
Old Squaresoft did it fairly well too. A lot of their old JRPGs, they'll have sound the whole time, and then you'll walk into one area and it'll just go silent. Very eerie, very unnerving.
Chrono Trigger springs to mind.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger did it a few times. Video, consistent styling, fairly standard, and most games. Honestly, I don't know if I can think of a game that I would give a bad mark to for consistent styling, but it's still something you want to watch for.
It's something that I've seen definitely get polished throughout like early access cycles. For instance, a game that I really love is Slay the Spire, and its art initially was very inconsistent, like clearly done by a bunch of different artists and trying to figure out what style they were going for. And then by the time they actually hit release, it had all been tightened up and was much better.
Yeah, alpha beta stuff. Last thing you're working on is your art and your audio, which unfortunately a lot of people don't understand and rag on the alphas for it. Give the guys a break. We'd get alphas a lot quicker if you guys weren't so critical about them. What you get as an alpha and called an alpha is really more of a semi-polished beta, just so
Yeah.
that you don't bitch about it. Animation. Animation, we're talking how smooth it is, how transitional it is. Can you tell, when I do this, do I magically jump forward 5 feet as I grab a ledge and teleport to places? Things like that. And performance. Everybody's familiar with that in the PC world. Console gamers maybe not so familiar, you might not realize it, but consoles actually do have quite a bit of performance issues. They will drop frames considerably. They will slow right down at times in games.
And it's something that's very important to be tackled, especially on a console, because a console gamer generally expects to be able to just pop a cartridge in, pop a disc in, whatever you have, and be able to play it and have a good experience. And if they're not having a good experience, it's very clear that at that point the developer has messed something up because there's no upgrade. You can't go buy new parts for your console.
PS4 Pro.
Yeah, until the manufacturer releases.
And writing. Storyline, character, world building. I don't think that needs any real explanation if you've played a game before. World building, maybe I'll go into a little bit. That's the ability to create a believable and cohesive world. See Witcher 3. The very, very, very best thing about that game. You feel like you're in the world. You really, really do. It's a very, very well done world. Even the little touches apply to it a lot, such as I'm walking through the streets, I hear what people are talking about as a conversation. I would have loved to see more depth in that, where as I'm walking down the street, I overhear a conversation and a quest pops up. Something like that. That would be a nice little touch, but I still think they did a really good job on it.
Yeah, for sure. And a mechanic like that in a game like, say, like you mentioned, Witcher 3, or say Outer Worlds, which came out just recently, would be fantastic.
Yeah, and that was almost something that was done in the Fallout 1 and 2 series. There was a lot of passive dialogue that would go on around you, and they couldn't do the voice and have all the voice files and everything like we do now, because that whole game was, I think, 6 gigs, which is ginormous when it came out. The massive install of it is like 500 megabytes, and that leaves a lot on the disk still. No, I think it was.
Yeah,
I guess it would have been more like 600-700 megabytes. Really, it was one
the
disk.
the computer that I first had when those games were coming out could not have installed both of Fallout 1 and 2. It did not have enough hard drives.
Yeah, that's apt. Pseudo, any games you would like to put on the list?
Older games or newer games that we played?
Anything that you want to review at this point.
I'd put Fallout New Vegas on there. Probably also. Let's see here. Let's put Stardew on.
Excellent choices so far.
I'm going to add in my old NES classic, because I love that game.
Oh, fantastic game.
That game was my childhood. Large portions of it, playing it over and over and over and over again.
It's one of those games that you really want to put the time in and master.
I don't know, it's not so hard nowadays. Now that I'm all grown up, I can just grab and be like, hey, look, I could roll through it. But man, when I was 7, that game was tough.
Let's put Dark Cloud on there as well.
I love that game.
No, I actually never played that, so I'm looking forward to hearing your opinion.
I was the one who got Pseudo into it. I gave him my old Dark Cloud disc when he was a kid.
Right on. So for one of my games, I'd like to do, the new Doom, the 2016
Yeah,
release
but
that
need
came.
to say it. I'm like, he's gonna want to do this game. I know him.
I think that game is absolutely wonderful, and sort of from a more retro but still near to my heart game. I'd like to do Super Mario RPG.
Absolutely loved that game. Absolutely love that game. Beautiful. I'm going to throw a really cool one off of the SNES on my list as well, just because it was so revolutionary at its time. That game changed the face of gaming, changed how we understand games today.
Yeah, the technology that went into building their pre-animated characters and pre-animated backgrounds and pre-rendered everything was incredible.
Breathtakingly expensive. We'll go into that more. Who gets Bloodborne?
I don't know. The other one gets Sekiro.
Where would you like to start, Pseudo? Have you not played any of these? You've not played Bloodborne, I think.
I haven't played I haven't played the new Doom or the Super Mario RPG.
You've never played the
The
new
rest,
Doom.
no, not yet. I've been meaning to for a long time because it looks fantastic, but I haven't gone around
You
to it.
gotta get around to that, man. Doom
I'll
Eternal's coming out soon.
I'll tell you, it looks fantastic and it's better than it looks. I'm not a shooter fan. I don't like shooters. Hey everybody, I'm Deus and I don't like shooters. That game was awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah, every once in a while, you get one of those games that is just transcendently good and goes past what its genre generally, pinholes things in.
Yeah, the transcendent genre I often refer to. And that is any game that is so good that even if you don't like the type of game it is, you'll like it. You're gonna like that game. Like Chrono Trigger. It doesn't matter if you don't
Yeah.
like JRPGs. It's just a good game. You need to play it. So, since you've not played it, I'm actually going to start with it. Just to teach you about it. To make you want to play it. Is that okay
Sounds
with
good.
you? How do I want to format this?
I think we kind of have to work backwards and talk about the leaf nodes, so to speak, of our review system first. Talk about each of the individual qualities, and then sum them up.
Yeah. So that is the for anybody that wasn't watching last time, we did come up with a good little process here to actually take each one of them. Oh, come on.
Nope, it's decided that it is full screen, and you cannot do anything about that.
There we go.
Hey, there we go.
And I think I want to do this as 2 rows. Just going to delete it all. Okay, so first we're going to go into a very top little review system. We're going to give it 2 rows and 4 deep because we have to do gameplay, audio, video, and writing. Now, before we were talking about having a yay or nay, but I think we need to go to a 3-tier system.
So like it's present but not great or unnecessary, perhaps, for the game.
Yeah, like I think most games will be an okay most of the time. And that reserves the thumbs up great for like, wow, this killed it. And if you get a whole bunch of those, then it's probably going to be a really good game, and most games are going to be, which is fair. Most games are, And then every once in a while, you'll get a game that just gets the thumbs down, and you're like, oh, ooh, I want to avoid that.
Yeah, I'd say that that's fair. I'd say that that's a good way to deal with maybe binary not being a big enough choice.
So I'm gonna
So
good, okay, bad.
yeah, at the top level, I'd say that's a good sort of ratings.
Okay, we'll go by that for now. Uh, Myself, Doom 2016's gameplay was a good, just un, unwaveringly good gameplay. It focuses
Absolutely.
on the core elements that make a shooter, and sort of pushes the rest aside. You don't get the RPG elements that other shooters have. You don't have all this extra fancy stuff. It just focuses on accuracy in your clicks and are you moving. You just want to run and gun the entire time. If you have not played Doom 2016 or if you're having issues on Doom 2016, don't stop moving and you will win.
And there's a very interesting thing that they did with the gameplay in Doom that I'll talk about later under the mechanical cohesiveness in more depth. But they took out reloading because they said, you know what? Reloading pauses the gameplay too much. When you're reloading, you're not shooting things. Let's have them shoot things more.
You know, when I first realized there was no reloading in the game at all, I was like, does that take away? You know, are they thinning out the play style here? Is it making it, you know, I don't have to think as much, you know, I don't have to duck and reload, I don't have to watch my magazine when I'm shooting things. All it did is it made the action pace fast, 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 fast. You're always going, you're always moving, you're always shooting, and as soon as you stop going, moving, or shooting, you die.
I thought that was absolutely brilliant. But now that we have a an overall good for gameplay, let's move on to. So for audio in Doom, I would definitely say the musical score is definitely a good. I absolutely love the score for Doom. The voice acting,
Well,
I would say
let's
it's okay.
remember the top is just audio as a
Yeah,
whole.
and then I'm just trying to figure out how I feel about it because
Welcome
the
back,
score
Nariel.
is good, the voice acting is okay, and the sound effects are kind of a mixed bag in my.
I thought it fit. I think overall, as an audio experience, I'd say it's good.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with that.
Maybe not every part of the audio experience is good, but it as a whole, I loved the audio. My head's going. I'm into it. Yeah, yeah, very very good. Video.
Well, as far as performance and consistent style, I have to say that it's definitely good, and maybe we should pick some less stellar games to do this review system with as well.
We will. We will.
But the the animation at times is definitely more of an okay than a good, but I'd say still overall good.
I would agree, and I really wanted to get your opinion on that one before I agreed with it because of performance. Because I played the game so late that my system destroyed it, and I have no idea how good it was when it came out.
I did play that game on launch. I bought it on launch, and it still ran at well over 100 FPS when I was playing.
That's phenomenal. Xenogears. You know what? I played that game a lot. Howdy, Narield. Welcome to the stream. I did play Xenogears a shit ton. We do want to do requests from you guys aside from the games that we've decided here. We just had to set up a little bit just in case nobody came up with a suggestion, but we 100% will do Xenogears, or I will, anyway. And
Maybe I'll go play it as homework, and then we can have a dialogue about it at least.
maybe you should watch it as homework. Rage has sprung a stream leak. Oh, Steam leak. I
the
see.
vape.
I see. Stream leak. I was like, what leak? What's going on?
We have things to leak. What?
So yeah, video good. And writing, I give it an okay.
Yeah, definitely okay. I would say that world building is its strong suit.
Yeah.
The storyline is not great. The character building is also not.
I mean, come on. How good can character? Yeah, good, fair, poor. A good, okay, poor is basically what we're doing here. We decided before it was good, bad, and I said we need a middle ground. Because that's where most games are going to be. We need to have a really good point to say, hey, this game was actually amazing here, and you should really, really check this out.
Yeah, and I'd say the writing in Doom is serviceable, but it's definitely not a highlight of.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, gameplay is one of our most in-depth analysis.
For very, very good reasons. Yeah, such as it being a game. Go figure, gameplay would be important to a game. Maybe
No
you should
kidding.
be a developer, Nariel, because the rest of them don't seem to get it.
No, it's all about the microtransactions now. The gameplay is not actually.
Oh, don't forget the particle effects.
Yeah, also the particle effects. You need to have that 2080 Ti, or you're.
Yeah, got to please all those people that spent too much money on their video card.
So as far as gameplay goes, I'm thinking we should actually move mechanic cohesiveness further down in the list, maybe down around RNG and bugs, just because I don't feel like it's what we want to be leading with from a gameplay perspective.
That's fair. There we go. I say the control was good. Good in the game.
Yes, definitely
Absolute good.
very good.
It was super, super, super fluid. Super fluid. There's never a moment where I'm like, oh, I didn't do this. Oh, I should have, oh, I wanted it to do this and it didn't. Every time I'm coming up to a ledge, I'm like, I want to vault this ledge. Vaults the ledge.
There is one thing though that I will say was, in my opinion, fairly poor actually, up until you get an upgrade, and it is the jumping. The jumping did not feel great until you get the double jump boots, and then you're like, this is how this game is supposed to be played.
Every FPS game I played after I played that, I tried to double jump in. Just instinctively, I was like, It was Borderlands 3. That's what we were playing at the time. That game needs a double
Yeah.
jump.
Yeah, it really does.
Though the slide is beautiful. Love the slide ad. Didn't think I liked it
Yeah.
so much until I tried to play 2.
Yeah, it turns out going back and playing the older ones, you missed the slide quite a bit.
Okay, RNG.
So RNG
I
is
mean,
an interesting one in this one, because it's not really a thing. Like there is not really a application of our.
yeah. And my real question here is, I mean, does that mean it's good? And if we say good in RNG, does that just automatically mean there is none to little?
I think if we were to give it a good based on the fact that there is very little, then that is kind of making a statement that RNG is bad, which is not necessarily.
It's just mostly true.
Well, if you're trying to be competitive, but
I
say
mean,
Hearthstone, for instance, has a lot of RNG built into it, or any deck building game or card focused game has a lot of RNG built into it, just by the virtue of the fact that you're pulling cards
they have
out of a
some.
deck.
They have some. Hearthstone has more than most.
Right, for sure. And the way that it's dealt with in Hearthstone, I feel, makes the game more fun for a casual player, but more frustrating for somebody who's trying to be very competitive.
To me, it's not so much how much RNG is it, but how the RNG is used. So, with the example of Hearthstone, I'm totally fine with, random cards and random draw, and that's core to a card game, and that can all be controlled with other mechanics and made far more playable, suitable, livable. The RNG in Hearthstone, where it kills you, is you only get one mulligan on your hand, and 90% of the time you get the same hand. I didn't get that one. That always drove me nuts. And the other one is the RNG on the actual action of the cards.
Yeah, and I would say the RNG as part of the card's action is not necessarily a downside, because it can make it very exciting to play as somebody who doesn't take it very seriously, like myself.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the RNG aspects, but I also found that the game gave you enough ways to control the randomness that you didn't have to rely on it if you didn't want to.
Yeah, you can definitely build decks and just avoid the RNG cards. But it's the ones that, like, when you play this, it might be this, it might be that. Can't I just have a
Yeah.
card that does this? Or give it a
So
choice, or give the opponent a choice. Giving the opponent a choice is one of my favorite mechanics in art card games.
yeah, for sure. I would say, however, that we need a not applicable ranking for certain games, and I would say that a not applicable would suit RNG for Doom, and it just wouldn't get included in this table.
I agree with that, Nariel, but Hearthstone is also put forward as a competitive card game. And if I'm in a seriously competitive situation, I don't want a random effect when my card hits. Poker does not change the card when you play it. If you play if you have a 5 in your hand, it's going to be a 5. If you have a king, it's going to be a king. It's not like when I reveal my hand, all my cards randomize. And that's really more what Hearthstone would be. This card's just bouncing around to random things.
Yeah, and I agree with you that if you want to enjoy a game that has decks building in it, or deck building in it, and you want to be able to draw cards from a deck, there is a certain level of RNG that's going to be in that game, and you just kind of have to accept that that's going to be there. And that level, I feel, is just sometimes less egregious than other ways that RNG has been applied, say in a shooter, having random spray patterns rather than controllable ones like in Counter-Strike, for instance.
Well, that's a really good example where CS:GO actually went to random spray patterns for a while, and all the pro players just quit.
Yeah, they didn't play it anymore.
Yeah, there is, like I said, it's about how the RNG is used. Now, here's a really, really good example, okay? MMOs. World of Warcraft Classic being super, super, super popular now, and New WoW not being so popular. I was listening to an interesting conversation about RNG that Asmongold was having with his people, where he was talking about how the new weapons that drop now have all these random aspects that can roll on it. So every time the weapon drops, it's a different weapon, but that means it's almost impossible to get your true best in slot, and a lot of players hate this. Now, there's always been random loots. Every time you kill the boss, random items dropped from him, but they were set items. Now, what I see the problem here is your sample set. Because the one item itself is randomized, you need to see that item drop hundreds of times in order to have a reliable spawn of a certain type. And you're not even going to see it every week. So now you're talking about years and years and years of farming just to see that one item that you actually wanted to see. That's bad RNG. That's too much RNG. The simple RNG of just here's the set items and one of them will drop each week. Now, because it's every single week that you're getting the kill, that you're creating a sample set, you're getting far more realistic values to actually see that item. And then when you see it, it will be what it is. Now that's good RNG. That's creating replayability rather than let's try to keep the player playing forever and never let them see what they want because we want to milk money out of these people, which is really what it's becoming.
Which is very unfortunate because I am not a big MMO player, but I know a lot of people that are, and I know that they are very frustrated by the way that the RNG is now being implemented with random stat rolls on items that in the past didn't.
Pseudo, you have any input on RNG?
It really, I guess, kind of just depends on like what the game is trying to do with the RNG. I do like I played a fair bit of Hearthstone, and I kind of just view the RNG as one of the kind of like almost as if a counter mechanic. Like you kind of have to just try to play around it. It's kind of frustrating. It wasn't always the fun bit, but it was kind of just one of those things where sometimes it lets you kind of just pull a win out of nowhere, but at the same time, most of the time you're just losing out of nowhere because of bullshit RNG.
Yeah, but at the same time, like playing a card and you're just like, please hit that one big enemy and kill it in one shot, and then you get it. You feel so good. So
And I think that just lends into what we were talking about of the competitive versus the casual. The casual,
yeah,
it's
for
great
sure.
because then just hilarious shit happens and somebody wins and nobody cares. Competitive, I've got this deck, I've been going, and then all of a sudden this guy just gets lucky and kills me at the end. No, not good.
Yeah, not great from a competitive standpoint.
So maybe this RNG topic has to be approached logically with the game, basically. Is the RNG in the game used properly within the game?
So maybe this effectively ends up being a binary choice that we say it was used appropriately for the style of game it is, or it was not used appropriately for the style of game.
Exactly. And then because this is just level 2 of 3 and the next one when we do the little review on it, then we'll justify why we gave it a good or an okay or a bad. Bad because RNG was used this way. Bad because RNG is here and can cause this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that approach for this. And in that case, I would say that the RNG in Doom is good because the only place that it's used is for some enemy AI and deciding which attacks they're going.
Yeah, and I don't even really consider that RNG personally, since it's not just a completely random thing. They're also taking into account some player location information and stuff like that.
Yeah, but they still have a table of things that they're going to roll across.
Yeah, and I want RNG. That's a good use of RNG. That means that you're not going to approach the boss and see the exact same pattern every single time.
Oh, okay. I will take a look into my audio and see what's going on.
Yeah, it's definitely the last word for me, but cuts off a little quick.
Okay, I have increased my push to talk release time. Hopefully you will be able to hear everything I say now, rather than just most of it.
Much better. Much better. Bugs, we don't need to talk about that. Good. I didn't hit a single bug the whole game. Actually, you know what? Let's call it okay, because I've seen a speedrun of that game.
Yeah, ceilings are a suggestion in Doom 2016.
Yeah, and floating point errors are a realistic thing that you can expect to see, so jumping through levels is, yeah, okay. Okay, because they didn't break the game. If you're not looking for the bugs, you won't hit them. But if you look for
And
them, they are certainly there.
yeah, it's no initial release of Skyrim or Fallout.
Hey. Fallout 3.
Yeah, fair. Fallout 3.
Fallout 76. Actually, you know what? Fallout 2 was buggy as shit. It really was. I mean,
So
even now, if you don't
everything
know,
but Fallout 1.
Fallout 1 I'm sure has some good bugs, but Fallout 2 is actually like if you don't know the bugs as you're playing it, you might not be able to finish it. So I'd give that one a bad actually. Mechanic cohesiveness. VG, no one sees a bug. G, speedrunners see the bug. F, some people find it. Most people find the bug. Can't play it. Yeah, for me it's, did the bug stop me from finishing the game, basically. Because I can think of many games where the bugs stop me, like flat out stop me. I can't play this game anymore. The bugs have killed it. That's bad. If it's,
That is definitely a bad.
like I did hit the Final Fantasy VI bug one time where my items in my inventory got jumbled up and Gao was equipped with a Phoenix down for the rest of the game. It doesn't actually affect anything, so I'm fine with it. I'd probably give it a good because most people will never ever see that bug. Some helpful bugs, yeah. Whenever I hit a helpful bug, I'm like, bad ones even out.
Mm.
The game giveth and the game taketh away. Mechanical cohesiveness. Now, this is a great game to talk about this because it's a beautiful example of it. The chainsaw.
Yes, the
Best.
chainsaw is such a good mechanic in Doom 2016.
It wants you to run and gun and shoot and not stop shooting. And if you ever run out of ammo, you take out your chainsaw and you got more ammo.
You turn a demon straight into more ammunition.
Yeah, who doesn't want more ammos?
Another great mechanic, like I talked about earlier, is the fact that you don't have to reload.
Yep.
The fact that they took out reloading, that was wonderful. Double jump, allowing you way more movement throughout the level in a game that's so fast-paced and frenetic.
Even just the move speed, base move speed that they've set, stuff like that. Everything felt really, really, really good. And then the mechanics of the shooting and the actual technical aspects of it were all pinpoint precision, spot on, exactly what you would expect from id, who invented the first-person shooter of today. They didn't invent first-person shooters. Let's get that clear.
Nope, they did not.
The first-person shooter ever created was called Happy Ball. Or no, Faceball. Faceball. They actually created a SNES version of it as well. That was fucking terrible. But yeah, it made them good.
So mechanical cohesiveness, definitely good.
Yeah, all the
Definitely
mechanics
good.
just lend to each other. Everything is in that main hallway of gameplay. The whole game is just like, let's run, let's gun, let's shoot, and let's just keep them doing that. And then all the mechanics are focused on keeping you doing that. That's what we want to see. Accessibility.
Which, as we spoke about before, leads into an incredibly tight and satisfying core gameplay loop, which did get dropped out of our sort of review template, but I think is something very important to talk about as well.
100%. 100%.
So as far as accessibility goes, they do have the ability to remap all of your controls. Say if you've got some sort of dexterous challenge, maybe not so good at using keybinds in a certain way, so you have to adjust it so that you can use it in a different, use the keyboard differently to access your inventory, for instance. They did not, however, as far as I can recall, have any sort of colorblind modes.
I got some Doom soundtrack on in the background now for you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'd call it okay on the accessibility.
Yeah.
They did. Actually, I don't know if they had XY flip because I don't use XY flip on my mouse.
They do under the controller options.
Okay. I have it really, really low as well.
So yeah, I think an okay is appropriate in the an okay is appropriate for accessibility for Doom.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not terrible. It can do it. Hey, how's it going, Wasabi Kid? How you doing today?
For anybody who's joining us a little later in the stream, we are now applying the game review template that we came up with the other day to a couple of games that we really love, and we'd love to take some input from anybody else who has joined us as far as other games that we should apply this template to.
Yeah, I'll keep a little list of requests down here for you guys, so you know what's been asked for. Xenogears is one of them, and I think that's a great one to do because while it's a fantastic game, most of its actual mechanical things were shit. I have been sick for over 2 weeks. Today is the first day I can almost talk. I've been sucking on halls the whole time, but I'm okay. I'm okay. Hopefully I'll be back to actually streaming for you guys soon here too. More halls.
Always. All right then, let's dig a little deeper into audio.
Sound effects. You said you had negative and positive for, so I'm interested to hear where you were fuzzy and where you were muddy on your choices in that one.
Sound effects overall, I would say were fairly good, but for instance, the first shotgun that you get sounds a little anemic. It doesn't feel good, and I think that mostly comes down to the audio effect that you get with it. Because you do eventually get the super shotgun, and the super shotgun sounds way better.
It
It
also
just
kills
feels so
things.
good to use. It doesn't kill things that much faster than the regular shotgun, actually.
That's fair. The burst on the
The
regular
fact that
shotgun was
you're
pretty awesome.
yeah, and the fact that you're just firing 2 shots at once, you're dealing double the damage. But you would kill the same thing with the same amount of shots from the regular shotgun, and it's just down to, I think, the audio. The audio for the default shotgun was very anemic. It wasn't very strong, and I can think of a couple of other weapons that were less satisfying as well. The audio for the plasma rifle, not super great. The alternate fires on it, however, were fantastic. But the default shot for the plasma rifle was not great. Um, the audio for the rocket launcher was meh, it was all right.
Actually, now that I think about it, yeah, I didn't really notice the sound of my guns so much when I played it as just the soundtrack. It's just the music
Yes, and the
constantly.
music is fantastic.
So much energy from that just gets you going.
So I would say, like, I'm leaning more towards an okay in sound effects. Like
You,
the demons were really well done. Most of the weapons were really well done.
y-
The environment was well done, but there's enough that I don't feel like it would be a shining example of how to do sound effects.
that's fair. I do like the demon sounds. I do like the demon death sounds. But yeah, I do agree with the gun sounds. Thinking back on it, they just, and I think it might be that they maybe subdued them a little bit as opposed to the sound of the music because they knew that the music was the real gem
They
in
knew
that.
how good of a job Mick Gordon had done on that soundtrack.
Hail Mick Gordon.
Indeed.
And voice acting, okay.
Yeah, it was serviceable.
There's nothing else
I
to really
liked
say about it.
the main guy's voice acting. Can't remember his name now. Robo guy. He was good. Helena Pierce was
Yeah, yeah, it was passable. Basically, it had it.
it was there. It didn't detract from the game.
It was a thing. Ah, it likes that space there. Okay. And
Well, you can
writing.
keep it.
Oh no, I haven't done video yet. Have I?
Yeah, we still got to tackle video, which is some of the high points of this game.
Absolutely. You want to start talking about the consistent style of it?
Sure, I can definitely do that. Doom 2016 I found to be a shining example of consistency in visual style and visual tone. And they did such a wonderful job of blending all of these different environments that you get into, because you're first on Mars, and then you travel to hell, and then you're in this crashed spaceship, and they're all significantly different, that you can feel like I'm in a different place, I'm in a different environment, but at the same time you still feel at home. You don't feel like you've been jarred into a different location and have to deal with grokking how to visually navigate your way around a different style of environment. I would say the consistency in the style is very, very good.
I have absolutely no arguments to that point of view. And Pseudo will choose a game that you know next. I'm sure you're frantically installing Doom 2016 right now as we're talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. I am definitely excited to play it. There's some stuff I didn't know about the no reloading thing. That sounds actually really, really awesome.
Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely change to the game. It just amps up the pace. Um, Animation, I'm gonna say okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'd agree with that.
it's there. They have animations. They look right. You can tell what the enemy is doing, but there's nothing special to it.
There's also some bugginess around glory kills, and you can actually clip out of bounds using them, and they'll teleport you up onto ledges that you shouldn't have been able to reach, etc., etc.
The telling up,
So
the teleporting up to ledges that you shouldn't be able to reach, that's a bad one for sure. But the whole clipping through things sometimes while the animation is playing and whatnot. I mean, while I agree that takes away from the animation, that is there in order to keep the gameplay good. Because you don't
yep,
want it to be like, oh, you can't do that here. There's not enough room. That sort of
yeah,
thing.
I definitely wouldn't say that it kicks anything else down to a bad, and I wouldn't say that it kicks animation down to a bad, but it's definitely not a good from an animation perspective.
For sure, they could have done better. And performance, you were saying good.
Oh yeah.
It just
Oh
ran
yeah.
well.
It ran so well. I was playing it to be fair, on a very good graphics card at the time. I was playing at 4K on a 980 Ti, and it actually handled it very, very well
4K?
at 4K.
Wow. Wow. And the weakest part of the game, by far.
Yeah. So storyline, it's fine.
Yeah,
It exists.
it has one. It is a shooter story. You shoot things.
It's just contriving different ways for you to shoot things and different places to go in order to shoot them.
Yeah, the storyline wasn't the main part of the game. It was just a bullet delivery system. That's really all it
Yes.
was. Characters were okay. I didn't hate
Uh,
them.
yeah, I would agree with okay, with the note that Doom Guy himself is pretty standout in the fact that he is written so well and you get such a sense of his personality without him talking at all.
Yeah,
Like one of the first things you do in the game is you load up, you wake up, immediately you have a gun in your hand, you're shooting the head off zombies, you go over and retrieve your armor, and then suddenly this audio log starts playing through this computer panel, and he's talking and going on, and Doom Guy gets just as frustrated as you do, and he proceeds to smash the monitor.
the one that I was going to think of is when you have to turn off the power to the reactor, and the guy's like, "Okay, now gently turn it off," and you're just like, "Ugh!"
Just boot the entire thing off of the panel. Yeah, like Doom Guy himself was incredibly well written in that game, but everybody else was meh.
I mean, come on, let's be fair though. He's incredibly well written for a one-dimensional character.
Yes, incredibly one-dimensional, but intentionally so, and I think that they did a great job with.
Yeah, I agree, but he's bored. He's basically
Oh
just
yeah,
bored.
he just smashes his way through problems.
Bort
He's
is
very good at it, but it's what he does.
Bort was one of the first D&D characters I ever got to play D&D with Rage. It was quite interesting. All the
Yeah,
charisma in the world and absolutely no intelligence.
we'll tell stories of Bort in a later episode, perhaps.
But world building is good. I felt like I was in the
Yes.
world. The world feels very proper. It feels organic. It feels realistic. It feels like an issue that we could actually. He was a paladin. He was a half-orc paladin.
No, he was a half orc paladin who instead of using, say, a holy symbol to cast his spells from, he he had a unique way of dealing with holy symbols. He had brass knuckles and a hammer that were embossed with the holy symbol of his god, and he would hit somebody with that hammer or his brass knuckles and then use them as a casting implement.
No, he would use them to channel the energy of his god because they are now embossed with the emblem of his god.
He was an interesting character. But back to the topic at hand, I think.
Yeah,
S-
that
So
sums up the writing.
we've got a summary sort of what our thoughts on these different categories. And at this point, if this were to be a full review, I would like to go in and like discuss each bullet point in a little bit more depth, just from the get go.
Yep.
So maybe let's start at the bottom here and then work our way back up.
Sure, let's do a little example here with, start really at the bottom. Now I'm going to give this a bunch, and we can remove them after. And this is a good, and this is a bad. Or I guess we want more of a, or do you want just a write-up?
I think maybe just a write up as a justification
Because what we
makes
originally,
more sense.
I think what we originally were talking about is doing point form good bads, so that it's really glance digestible.
Which I think we've achieved in our upper categories. But this is now our time at which we can justify that decision.
Okay.
And maybe just for the sake of the show, this session we'll just do world building for Doom as an example, and we
Absolutely.
can fill out the rest later, and then we can
Absolutely.
move on to something that Pseudo can actually talk about.
Absolutely, because we've almost killed half of our time on this one game. We've been talking about Doom for almost an hour.
It turns out that in-depth game reviews take a while.
Yeah, turns out Doom deserves the time.
So as far as world building goes, a short blurb that I would say, basically just agreeing with all of your points, is that you feel engrossed in the world. It feels consistent. You feel like you're there. It feels visceral. You feel like you're reacting to the world around you.
And that would basically be our our structure. So now you can come through, have a real quick glance at the very top. There's your mile high review. And now you can come down to gameplay. Why was gameplay good? Well, because control, lack of RNG, or good use of RNG at least for the style, and mechanical cohesiveness are good. You don't have to worry about a lot of bugs, and the accessibility features are there.
And then if, say, you were wondering, oh, they ranked everything very highly for this game, but writing was only okay. Let's see why they thought that writing was only okay. So you can scroll on down to that writing section, and you can see that, well, we thought world building was very good, but say the character writing, if we had another write up for it, we only thought that Doom Guy's character writing was particularly good, and the rest of the characters were so-so.
Yeah, I like this. Pseudo, why don't you choose one now?
Sure. Can we see the list that we agreed on?
Oh, hell no.
And I do not have the best memory. Let's see.
Stardew or Dark Cloud, both good. Stardew, I think we could all talk about.
Yeah, I think either Stardew or Darkcloud, whichever ones you guys want to roll with. I think
Nariel,
if we've all
do you
played
know both of those
do that,
games?
or
Anyone else in chat have an opinion between those two? Dark Cloud or Stardew Valley?
Not Dark Cloud.
Okay, Stardew Valley it is. Dark Cloud is amazing,
Oh,
by the way.
we don't know about it. I don't know about it either. I would love to hear you guys talk about Dark Cloud.
Okay. Let's talk about some Dark Cloud then, Ty. Pseudo.
sounds good.
Our review system is already taking effect.
Dark Cloud is a beautifully done PSX game, PlayStation 1.
It's on PlayStation 2 as well. I'm not sure if it was originally on PlayStation 1, but I played it on PS2.
No, you're right. It is a PS2 game. PS2 game. My bad.
I think I still have the disc behind me, actually.
Mild disc?
I have like 2 or 3 copies somehow. I don't know how, but I just have
That's the
them.
sign of a good game. You just end up buying multiple copies of it.
Yeah, that was me and StarCraft Brood War. I've bought that game like 6 times.
Yeah, I had multiple chests of the Brood War chest. I had multiple Diablo 1 chests. And my latest game that I bought multiple times is I've now bought Dark Souls 7 times, I think.
That's quite a few.
I want more. I want another one for my Switch. Okay, Pseudo. I'll let you jump on this one. Dark Cloud's gameplay.
Sure, I'm gonna. This is where my memory kind of isn't the greatest, but I'm gonna talk about from what I remember. As you can kind of correct me on anything I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'll
From
throw some in.
gameplay. I'll throw some. Yeah, yeah. Should we maybe kind of give an overview of what Dark Cloud is? Because I feel like a lot of people don't really know what it is and kind of how to explain it. Genre-wise, not the best. I don't know how to really describe it. From what I remember, it's kind of just your a lot of dungeon crawling, and
Yep.
the point of this dungeon crawling is that the big bad. I can't remember the boss at all, but basically went over and kind of just took all these civilizations and these towns, and for some reason they're in like these little capsules, and you basically just go dungeon exploring. You get new weapons, and when you kill certain enemies or loot certain chests, you get parts of the town. You get the buildings themselves, you get people themselves, and you take those back to the towns, and you actually have to kind of build the town.
Yep.
So,
It was a combination of dungeon explorer as well as like town builder management
So
kind
sort
of
of
idea.
like how ActRaiser handled it.
Kind of like a modern ActRaiser, but 3D dungeon crawling. I've got some video of it playing right now. The guy's running around in the first dungeon. Yeah, just beautifully little done game. The whole world has been destroyed and everything's been wiped out and hidden all over, and you've got to go and find it and put the world back together, zone by zone.
Man, I'm getting nostalgia just watching that video.
Just getting lost in it, huh?
Yeah. So I guess we'll dive into we dive into gameplay first, or how do we want to approach?
Yeah, that's what you start with. Just the overview. Where would you put gameplay? Okay, good, or bad?
Um, it's kind of hard because a lot of it kind of feels it's hard to judge when I first played it versus like how I think about it now a lot because
There's a lot of
it's good.
nostalgia.
There's a lot of nostalgia. Yeah, it's good. Nostalgia clouds a bit, and I'm not too sure what would be like cliche at the time or what would just be basic at the time. But I don't remember anything too negative
I would
about the gameplay itself. So,
I would say the
sometimes it got a
gameplay
little
is
repetitive,
okay.
but it's overall it's just okay. It's not a bad experience, but it wasn't anything like super special, and you wouldn't play it just for the gameplay itself.
It had its own little issues still. Audio, I would say good for its era.
Yeah, no, yeah, the sound effects were decent. I don't think there wasn't voice acting, but that wasn't really a big deal.
Yeah, it wasn't
And I
lacking.
remember the music being pleasant, and I remember that the town music versus the dungeon music was actually decent. Nothing was really jarring, and everything was polished well enough on a engineering.
Yeah, had a very good feel to the music. You felt safe and at ease when you were in the town, and when you were in the dungeon, it felt dangerous and on edge and alert in the music. And the dungeons were not easy.
Right. For video, it was pretty. It was actually a fairly pretty game for like the PS2 era, and I remember it came out. I think it came out in 2000. I can't remember the actual lifespan of the PS2, but I think it was later on, or either early on or later on. Um, but I don't remember ever having issues with the graphics themselves. Things looked like how they should. It kind of wasn't anything super special. It wasn't like the kind of crisis of its day or anything like that. It's just they had.
I mean,
It was
compared to other I guess it was PS2. I keep thinking PSX.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
PS2, so
I'd
it
say
was
okay. Yeah.
yeah, I'd say okay. I don't think it really everything was kind of just yeah okay. Effects and everything was okay. Graphic wise, everything was okay. But there was of course lots of room that could probably improved with the comparative titles that were out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at what else was on the PS2 at that time. A good would be Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, yeah, and
No,
like
yeah,
cutscenes and stuff
if
like
you're
that.
going up against Final Fantasy X, you've got your work cut out for you. That game was gorgeous on the PS2.
Also a fantastic game. My last my last Final Fantasy that I truly loved. Haven't loved one since. Very heartbroken. Come on, Square Enix, pick it up. You bought Squaresoft, don't fail. Writing, Pseudo?
Um, Unfortunately, I don't remember a whole lot, but I don't remember it being bad writing. I know that some of it was. I'm pretty sure I have to research this a bit more, which I did beforehand, but I'm pretty sure it was a Japanese game
Yep,
that would have been translated over.
yep.
So there's the obvious things that come with that that are just kind of a little bit lost in translation, not to like a terrible fault. It wasn't really noticeable at the time when I played it, but I was fairly young. But the story overall kept me engaged. It made me care about the town that I was dealing with. One other aspect of this game is when you actually get the pieces of the town and you're building them, the characters tell you kind of what they want. So they'll kind of complain to you if you stick them by like a person they don't like. They're like, hey, I don't want to be here. Or, before the town, I had a river near me. Or they'll talk about like the things they kind of want to be around now that for some reason this kid has the ability to just move entire houses with the palm of his hand. But that kind of it kept you engaged at least. So it wasn't just mindless collecting of stuff. You would have to collect the stuff and then still talk to everyone in town to make sure that they were happy with what things are going, and they will give you certain items for certain things and quest lines, or engaging enough that it kept it consistent. I'd say it was okay. I don't know if it was super amazed, and I was just like it was
I'm
honestly
gonna
wasn't.
I'm gonna argue with you, and I'm gonna say the writing was actually good. I was starting with an okay, but you reminded me about how every single person in every single village had their own wants, needs, likes, dislikes, desires. And you had to take all that into account while you're building the town. And that's awesome.
Yeah, and they did it fairly well enough that you weren't really interpreting it as the dev putting a mechanic in there. You were still actually thinking like, oh, this person wants it this way,
Yeah, let's make this
and
person
this
happy.
doesn't really felt like a forced thing. We could see like, oh, they made it this way because of this. It's like, oh no, this character has personality traits, and the personality reflects on what they kind of want in their kind of neighborhood.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that deserves the bump up to good. Now we go deeper into the gameplay, the control of the game.
Um, I remember the controls being solid. I remember there being some issues with kind of camera angles since the dungeons are fairly small. It could be kind of a problem to kind of get in there. Another thing I remember is that you kind of just have the one running speed. I know you can walk if you use the analog stick slightly, but you kind of just are always running. And it was okay. I don't remember anything like too terrible. I don't remember really being frustrated at the controls or having the controls kill me too often. Attacking, I think, is fairly straightforward as well. There weren't really any intricate combos or anything like that. It basically just depends on what weapons you're using. So I'd kind of just give this an okay as well. I don't think it really did anything too
I'm
amazing or special. There were improvements that could be made, like I said, with camera angles, but overall, from what I remember, it was okay.
I'm absolutely with you on the okay on that one. I think for a good, I would have liked to see a better dodging system. Once you got to the late game, the melee was almost impossible. You just had to go ranged and avoid things from ranged and shoot them by the end of it.
Right, I remember that.
So if I were to call control good, I would have liked to see a better dodging system, maybe some iframes or the ability to move a little faster to actually get out of the things that are flying at you. And there was just no way to actually avoid.
The other thing I remember, the second part of this, is the actual town building. I remember the UI was decently pleasant to work with. You basically just have an inventory with a picker, and the controls are still intuitive for it being on a console, where typically these kind of games, like sim building city games, were primarily PC games. I remember not really having a problem with it. You pick the item, you go to the grid view, and you basically just rotate and drop. The
Yep.
same thing with like building up rivers and bridges and stuff like that. There was nothing really. It was solid there as well.
The game did start a little slow. I agree, Raven, because you had to get into that first dungeon and you were quite weak, and the first dungeon was quite difficult, and you have to fight a few enemies and level up and leave and come back and do that a few times to really get the flow of it. But once you've played the game a few times and you're good enough, like you could dodge some of the hits, you can beat enemies without taking too much damage once you get used to it. I think that was more there's a bit of a difficulty and learning curve at the beginning to get it started. But do you think that it being slow was a negative thing? Like, was it bad? Did it really create a gap and prevent you from getting into the game? I'll let you type that out while we start looking at the RNG a little bit here, because there was quite a bit of RNG to the game. But I'm going to say good on the RNG because of how they applied it.
Yeah, I'd agree with you with that. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure the dungeons themselves were generated, and I know the item drops and such like that as well. I'll let you kind of expand on that more because I'm not 100% sure on all the mechanics. And I'm sure you probably have.
The dungeons, were the dungeons random? I don't think they were. I know that the map would disappear, but I don't think the dungeon itself was random. I think it was a curated dungeon.
It's possible. I don't think I had enough playthrough to really kind of remember the exact dungeons.
Yeah, the major RNG in the game is just weapon drops. What drops off of the enemy is the RNG in the game. And that's a beautiful implementation of RNG for a game. That's it. Sometimes you'll have to grind a little bit to get the item you wanted. If you really want it, sometimes you don't get it on your playthrough. I think that's a beautiful usage of RNG in a game.
Definitely not egregious like some other implementations that we've seen in dungeon crawly game.
Yeah, Diablo 3.
Well, the initial loot release of Diablo 3.
Yeah,
They did
Diablo
fix
3
it
1.0.
eventually.
Diablo 3 1.0. That's all we need to say. I made my money back on that game. Then they banned me. I was banned by Blizzard before it was cool. I really like slow games too, Raven, in general. I had lots and lots and lots of late charges as a kid renting games.
One other thing to add for RNG that I forgot about was the treasure chests. There were the mimics in there as well.
Oh yeah, they had mimics. I love that. I love mimics.
Oh, were they like placed mimics, or
Yep.
were they randomly a mimic? Wow.
No, it looked like a chest laid out in the order of chests in the place. It was like a Dark Souls level mimic.
Ha.
Yeah, it's unfortunate some people will never know the pain of returning a rental, because it's also a beautiful thing, because when you return that rental, you have a whole store of new games to choose from. It was lovely.
Being the younger sibling, I always just got the 7-day rentals, whereas the other brother would, or our middle brother would always get the 5-day rental. It's usually how that works. It's 1 5-day rental and you get a 7-day rental. So for me, that's how I played a lot of these games. At first, it was just like I didn't have much else. There wasn't new games for me to play, so I'd always just keep re-renting the same games and going through them.
Okay, bugs.
I don't remember running into too many when I was younger. I definitely are aware of them now, especially of the int overflow bugs. Those are pretty bad.
Just so you guys
But,
know, Pseudo has a unique ability to break video games. No one's ever broken a video game as well as him.
It's not really a good thing anymore. It's kind of annoying. I don't know how I do it. Every single game I play, it's really frustrating. The amount of time save games just get corrupted for me. It's not good. Okay, last time I was playing the Fable Anniversary, and I killed the bandit. I can't remember his name. When you first meet your sister, and the game does not think he's dead, and I can't progress the story anymore. I still have the quest, but I killed him, but he's not actually dead. So my game is just ruined. Yeah, bugs for this
Yeah.
game. I know there's one nowadays where you can you can int overflow your stats, which is kind of hilarious. And int overflow, and basically most counters you can int overflow on. And for people who aren't in a development sense, basically what that means is if you get the higher number, because of the code, there are limits to how high a number can go. And if you hit that limit, it rolls over to the next available number, which is going to reset back down to 0 or negative. And from what I remember, it would try to go negative, and if it was items or something like that, they would just disappear or they would go to 0. It was something that definitely should be handled. It was something that they were probably like, oh, no one will ever, get up to this number, but here you are. People get up to the number, and all of a sudden your stuff just breaks, or your items disappear, or your stuff resets.
I mean, it sounds like they did handle it in some way, at least, if it's not just crashing the game and it's just items disappearing. But maybe
It's
not handled
as
so
bad as it
well.
could have been, but still
I think
not
it's just,
great.
yeah, I think it was just like coincidentally didn't crash the game at least. But I have to actually research it again of exactly what happens and what you can int overflow. But I know that there were some glitches. I think speedrunners use some of them to like boost their items up really high,
I
but
can
they
see
have to
that.
be careful because if they do it too much, they overflow it and then kind of ruin their run.
So let's call it okay.
Yeah,
Because
there was nothing like it never nothing prevented me from playing the game like with Fable and my corrupted save game, and now I'm very sad about that. Or the game doesn't crash, or you don't have to like there weren't anything where like all of a sudden bosses don't die and all the other fun stuff that was around that time.
I've done multiple playthroughs of the game and I've never had a bug stop me from playing it, so at least it's okay. But I love that there's actually overflow bugs. I might try to go break it later.
I'll try to find an example.
You just gotta find enough downs on your stats that they roll back over to the top.
Yeah. Mechanical cohesiveness. Honestly, that's at best an okay. It's definitely not a good.
Yeah, I'd say it's an okay. It's one of those kind of weird genres where it takes multiple mechanics from the different genres and combines them into one thing that's kind of unique. And the problem with that typically is that you don't kind of get the nice kind of free flow polish that you would have if you just focus on one subset of a genre's mechanics, because you have the like world building and stuff like that, and you have like the dungeon crawling RPG fighting. So like you kind of just get okay for both of them. But luckily enough for this style of game, having okay for both of those results in an okay to good game.
So they did well enough.
Yeah, exactly.
The reason I'm going okay is because while the city building part is nice and well done, simple, watered down, very basic, but nice, well done, controls well, feels good. Same with the dungeon. Nothing complex, clearly half their focus is here, half their focus is here. The mechanics never touch each other, they don't really overlap with each other, they barely affect each other. It's just finding pieces in dungeon that you can place in the city. But it was still fun. They don't step on each other's toes, at least. And,
Yeah, that definitely sounds like an okay.
yeah. And accessibility. I was able to play it.
Yeah, but I think other than that, it's hard to say, because especially for that era, there weren't really many developers or games.
And you
adding
have to
tools for that.
compare to that era. So I guess an okay is fair.
Yeah.
Audio.
All right. Sound effects, them just being okay. I think they're slightly on the, if I remember correctly, slightly on the cheesier side, and but that the style back then, and I think that was kind of their intent to have it like that.
Yeah. Sound
But they
effects
sounded fine.
remind me of Ocarina of Time.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah!
But like, very much in keeping with the time at which it was made.
What?
Yeah, a lot of that stuff can get kind of annoying for certain people, but I don't remember it ever really bugging me.
No, we were kids, but it gets the point across. There's when you do something, it makes a sound. You can tell what you're doing by the sound, but it still feels like you're watching a cartoon or something.
I remember the monsters themselves actually had decent sound effect. They sounded cool. you knew when a certain thing was coming, and I think remember there being actual battle music too when you were in combat. And then the same thing, it's similar vein to Ocarina of Time, where you're basically going around opening chests, and there's a little animation and sound effects when you kick open a chest or open one of those ball things that has the item drop.
If I remember right, Raven, there was no voice acting in the game.
There
I
might
could
have
be
been
wrong.
cutscenes, I think. I don't remember. I don't remember the townsmen themselves, but I think there might have been in the cutscene.
I remember a lot
Yeah,
of reading.
I was going to say maybe there was cutscene voice acting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm giving it a bad just because it's not there, and if it is there, it's pretty weak. I mean, it's not two worlds, but
Well, though, would you say that a game like I don't know, Chrono Trigger would get a bad in voice acting, despite the fact that it's just not really applicable?
I think when you're getting down to the eras where voice acting wasn't even a thing, it's probably going to be an okay.
I mean, I gotta be that guy, Final Fantasy VI.
That's a good. Because they almost did voice acting with a chip tune. You can hear the words in the chip tune.
Yeah, that is definitely a good. I don't know. I still feel like for some of these we need a not applicable maybe. But
Yeah,
that being said, if there is voice acting in the cutscenes and the cutscenes are bad, then it's bad.
I think if there's no voice acting and voice acting is a thing in that era, it's bad.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that like say a game comes out today that is entirely text driven. Does that mean it gets a bad for voice acting just because it's not applicable to the game?
But like we were saying, just because it's a bad isn't necessarily a bad mark on the game. We're not saying the game's bad. It's just there's a lack of voice acting. And I would rather have some decent voice acting read me the text than sit there in silence and read the text myself.
Yeah, I guess.
Many games are going to have a bad there, and every once in a while you're going to have a good there. And like we were saying, this is mainly for people who really care about the voice acting now. Yeah, and it's not. It's totally okay to say that it had bad voice acting in it. I mean, you might get the odd fanboy going, "How dare you say something bad about this game?" But it's fact.
And that's not so much what I'm concerned about in as much as games that don't have by design voice acting
Like Tetris.
like Tetris.
It doesn't have it, so it gets a bad in it, but it doesn't need it. It's still a good game. Yeah, in recent years, it's more and more of a thing, and there have been some games that are terrible. Maybe no voice acting is okay.
Yeah, I would say like a game that was designed not to have voice acting just gets a neutral.
I think an okay is fine on it. JRPGs are critical to having voice acting nowadays. It creates a whole new depth and feel to the game.
Lets you convey much more emotion, and JRPGs are often very character driven.
Yeah, character and story driven. Really, really hard to get sarcasm out of text.
So if there is voice acting in the cutscenes and it is bad, I would say this definitely still deserves the bad in voice acting. But if it is entirely text, I would say that it's probably a like a pass.
We're gonna leave it on a bad. Because even if it doesn't have it, it's a game that could and should. It's a story driven dungeon crawler RPG.
Yeah, I just rewatched some of the cutscenes and they don't have voice acting, but they definitely could.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if the other regions had them or not, but I mean, at least the NA one did.
That would be an interesting thing too if they had Japanese voiceovers, but I'd hope that they would leave the Japanese voiceovers in, moving it over here at that point.
Yeah, just add subtitles, much like From Software did with the Souls games. All of the voice acting is in English, and there just was no localization option. You could have subtitles on, and the Japanese games would have Japanese subtitles over English voice acting, and I think that lent a level of authenticity to it, much like why I played Sekiro entirely in Japanese with subtitles rather than with the English voiceover.
Though next time you play it, you have to play it in Spanish.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Gyobu is just awesome in Spanish. Musical score. I don't remember the music well. It doesn't stick out, but I remember that there was music, and I remember it didn't annoy me. I think that's an okay.
Yeah, I'd say it was okay. I don't explicitly remember it. I don't listen to it like I do with other scores of my childhood, such as the Mega Man soundtrack and stuff like that, or Doom, or even some of the Donkey Kong songs. But I don't remember it ever really being a problem or annoying me or me ever like turning down the TV on or anything.
If there is no voice acting at all, should it be a non-existing rating? Well, that entirely depends on the game. As we were just saying, if it's Tetris and there's no voice acting, that's okay. So it's an okay rating. It's fine. It doesn't need it. But if it's a JRPG where it could have been heightened by it and it doesn't have any, then it's probably bad.
And I guess that'd just be something that's more like elaborated on in the further kind of review and the notes and stuff like that, saying like the does not have it, but these cutscenes definitely could have had it, and it would have added an element,
Yeah.
such as and then to contrast to like games like Tetris and stuff, where it's just like doesn't have it, wouldn't really add much by adding it, so it's fine. It just
For sure, for sure. Consistent style. How'd you feel about the style?
Um, I've just been refreshing myself here, going through it all. I do remember it being uh, fairly consistent. The UI wasn't really amazing, but it wasn't terrible. But it was at least the same. All the icons at least looked the same. Characters all at least kind of generally were modeled the same, and I would say it's consistent. I wouldn't say that. It's kind of hard to say if this was like great, but I'd say it was consistent. It's hard to figure out exactly what the style was. It wasn't really anything too different, but I don't see anything bad with it.
Yeah, I'm with you on the okay. The graphic level wasn't enough to have that lush, full feeling. It felt very empty, but they were kind of going for the empty at the beginning, as you have to put it all back together. Everything looked like it's from the same world, though it was all a little pastel, a little bland.
Yeah, like the characters would have their unique personality. I remember the guy that would wear the bear hood with the hammer, the big guy. When you start getting the other characters to play as, but like the main character and stuff like that, there was no one really that like kind of stood up in a memorable way. So it was at least consistent, but it wasn't like there. It could have been at least an art style where the personalities could have shown a bit more, and same with the towns as well. I can't remember the towns really being that different from each other, so this is probably somewhere where it was a little too consistent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a little
but
more
overall, it's
layout.
just okay.
More layout of the town than the actual difference of the town. Though the buildings themselves had quite a bit of flavor and uniqueness once you got into the deeper areas. Um, Animation, I'm gonna give it a good, personally, and I'm wondering what you think.
Like I said, once again, it's kind of hard for me to always remember. I remember there was only really like one or two attacks animations, but that's also just typical with the era.
Yeah, I mean there was only one or
I
two
remember the
attacks.
actual, yeah, yeah, but they were solid. Uh, Actual using of like items and stuff like that was good. Um,
I mean,
the actual boss animations was good.
whenever I got hit by something, I could see it hit me. Whenever my sword touched something, it caused damage to it. There was never any clipping. There was never any phasing. You were always aligned properly when you were
Sounds
opening
like
chests.
surprisingly low level of jank for the time.
No, it was a solid title. Unfortunately, a lot more solid than the sequel to it. The sequel, when I played it, it was just broken. So I never really got the part.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy the sequel either. Very
I
much.
was so excited. It was one of like those first things, like one of the first times when like you get so excited for a sequel, and then you learn that like just because it's a sequel doesn't mean you're gonna enjoy it as much as the first time.
Yep.
Especially when like I couldn't beat the first level because the game would crash, which was very rare in consoles that day. And then my save game corrupted, and it was just like the 2-in-1 combo of just like I guess I'm not playing this game anymore.
Yeah, I guess we're not actually gonna finish this.
Like I never made it through the tutorial. Like I've tried a few times, but it just would not let me. It just
That was me on Final Fantasy X when I first tried to play it. I just could not get past the scene where you're first running away from the big tidal wave. It just wouldn't let me out the door, and I was like, well, I guess I'm not playing this game.
Okay, I'm good.
you doing
I'm
okay?
good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Slightly dead.
Yeah, just a little bit. Performance. I mean, it was on a PS2. Yeah. Cheers. Yeah. Any game back then had some slowdown. I don't remember much slowdown. Frame drop.
They were
I wasn't really even
targeting
aware
as
of like
much.
frame drops and stuff like that back then, so I never really noticed. And I think the game was basic and designed fairly around not having too many enemies at once. I don't think it ever really ran into too much.
An interesting thing of the PlayStation 2 era was that frame rate was not considered as valuable as, say, graphical fidelity, because we were making the jump into 3D, and 3D was becoming so much more important in games, whereas games on like the NES or the Super Nintendo would have actually run at close to 60 frames per second for most of the time that you were playing them.
30.
Suddenly you were looking at frame rates of 30 and below for PlayStation and PlayStation 2 era titles.
Pretty sure SNES was 30.
The North American one was, yes, but it could get up to 50 in the European release.
Yeah, on the SFC.
Those games back then were like their clocks were directly tied with that. So if you got like performance issues with that, your whole game would either slow down or
Yep.
it could be bad. So I think they'll actually have to run at that no matter what. It's just how
Yeah, old game speeds were written. New games put in a timer, and they count time, and they do their time based on this. And this is why fast and slow computers all run it at the same speed. But with old games, they didn't do that. So if you like go grab an old DOS game and install it on your new computer and try to play it, it's just gonna be like and so fast that you can't even control it. Like the whole game just goes by in the blink of an eye as your computer basically just virtually plays the game in the blink of an eye as quick as it can, and then it's just done.
Yeah, that's an interesting artifact that you get with DOSBox, especially when you're trying to play older games that aren't necessarily, reliant on a clock for timing. It's more relying on the clock cycle of your processor, and you'll have to restrict the rate at which you're emulating the game in order to get the game to actually play properly.
But yeah, so that's a sidetrack. But the moral of the story is that the performance in Dark Cloud was good.
May have slightly gone off on a tangent there.
Pseudo storyline.
that's one of the things where I feel kind of bad always like jumping back to it because it's like typically when you do reviews, it's something that you would have done like played recently, so you can be a bit more informed on it and your judgment's a bit better. But I remember
played it recently. If you want me to
That's
talk.
good. Yeah, that's good too. But I'll just give it from like the general perspective. It was engaging enough that it hooked me. I actually cared
Yep.
about characters. You do get other characters you can play as they kind of join your party, and you can switch between them. And they were unique enough that they were intriguing. And the ones that were decent with their mechanics, you would play as Dea said earlier. You kind of need to give up on melee later on in the game, and you end up just playing as the people with slingshots or range attacks. but you still kind of care about everyone else as well. Same with the actual townsfolk, and there's usually like a mayor or someone that's kind of the head honcho that you mainly will talk to, and then as well as the boss dialogues and the kind of big bad.
Which lends itself to the good gameplay, because then you have a single point, but you'd get little things from everyone else. So storyline, good, okay, bad.
It's hard because to compare it with the other games in its era, it's okay. I enjoyed it, um, but I can't really think of exact like example points why at the moment. So I'll kind of just leave this up to you.
I'm with you. It's an okay story. You know, it's compelling enough that you want to play the game and finish the game, but it's not going to make you cry. It's kind of how I see it. You know,
Yeah,
Eris didn't
it's
die in the middle.
yeah. You don't like, there's nothing too memorable from it that I remember from it. I just like remember the game, which was fun and good. And you mostly just played it for the gameplay itself.
But I think character, you're going to go higher. I just have this feeling.
Yeah, character was good. I think the uh, like I said before with the actual individual characters, I remember I really enjoyed. I can't believe I can't remember his name. Why not actually Google this? The guy with the hammer. Remember, I enjoyed him a lot because he was very innocent. He was basically like just a big child
Yeah, he's from
running
the
around.
second world, right?
Yeah, I
Yep.
believe so. Um,
I don't remember the name either, but I remember where you get him.
yeah, and I remember he basically just yeah. I remember I enjoyed some of the things. At least like it was memorable enough that I know that I really enjoy him. And I remember that his writing was a bit not campy, but it was purposely like that because he's basically just like a child. And he's just
Yeah,
this
no,
big man. Not
it,
a
it
mad
was
child, but
campy
just
writing, but it
innocence,
was
running around, big hammer. He's just unnaturally strong for his age, and he smashes things.
yeah, he was bored.
Oh,
Yeah, but
his name is Goro. His name is
Goro,
Goro.
yes, I remember that one. But yeah, on the campy writing though, we've said earlier, campy's not bad. If you meant it to be campy, and it
Yeah.
came out campy, then it's well written. A lot of people enjoy good camp. I am one of them. I love bad movies. Bad movies and old bad gore movies. I love old gore movies. H.G.
Yeah, I enjoy
Lewis.
myself.
I haven't watched it yet, but I did download it. I've been sick all week and just trying to get better. Like working from home, I haven't streamed all week, and just laying in bed and resting.
But the cat people watch at this point is required.
I did want to know. I'm assuming you were talking about the early '80s one, which seems like the bad one. Yeah, I'm feeling much better today after resting my throat for the week, but I can feel it getting harsh again, and I've
I guess we better wrap up Dark Cloud.
yeah. And world building, Ty.
This one I'm a bit conflicted on, but I'm just gonna say was good because I think that's the main reason why I played this game so much and kept going back to it. Setting and stuff wise, it was okay, but you kind of like the writing allowed you to actually build the worlds that you were in, which was kind of very nice. And the towns I remember were different enough. They all had their own kind of central themes as well as the personalities that go along with them.
And they also had their own building quirks.
Yeah, all the different kind of architecture for each place. I remember one was like when you get Goro, I remember it's a very tree centric place. It's all like tree houses and a lot of forestry stuff. And then I know there's a deserty area, and it was good. I'm gonna say that it was good.
The world building is good because you literally build the world.
Because it is what you do in the game.
Yeah, no, yeah, every character had their own, like every little character in the town had their own desires, and they all had their own needs, and you had to meet everyone's needs when you built the place. So that sort of determined who has to be by where and what, and affects what can be central to the town, and
Although, as Raven says, is that more character writing, or is that more around the actual world building of, like, is this a believable world that you're in? Does it have its own history, etc.?
When you talk to the actual characters, it's kind of a bit of both, where you kind of have to use character writing to, portray the setting of the world. And they would give you, like, certain characters would give you their backstory of why they want to be certain areas or why they want certain things around their house, as well as certain characters kind of just give you the history of their villages and what's going on. And I think most of the time you would get a character from each village or each little map that you would go to. Um, but the actual design of the different, I guess, worlds of the world that you're in was good enough that you never really kind of questioned or fought against what was kind of going on. You kind of were just intrigued to find out more and more and kind of just make these people happy.
Yeah, then I would say that that's definitely worth a good in world building.
Yeah, it's not a super complex world itself. There's not a lot of depth to it. It was a happy place, and it's always been a happy place until this thing came along and obliterated everything, and now you have to put the happy place back together. But it's a good world, and it's got its own depth. There is people that don't like each other, do like each other. You build a little society in each one, and you do travel across the whole planet and build you get like a look of where everything is. I think you go to the moon after too. That was cool.
Build a settlement on the moon. As long as there aren't space Nazis.
Yeah.
Iron Sky, also the new Wolfenstein games.
Heavily inspired by Iron Sky, I'm sure. But
Oh
Iron
yes,
Sky was heavily
definitely.
inspired by the original Wolfenstein, likely, so it all goes around.
Oh, the new Wolfensteins are actually quite good. I enjoy them quite a bit. Not on the same scale as, say, Doom 2016, but they are quite good.
We're not going to have time to do nearly the games we put in here, but that's a good thing. And I guess we have to do a quick Xenogears, which is going to be all me, I guess.
Yeah, seeing as I haven't played it.
Yeah, either have I.
Here's the thing. Just because one person enjoys it doesn't mean another will, and just because one didn't doesn't mean another won't. Enjoyment is an entirely personal preference, and if you are going to enjoy a game or not is really based on what you're looking for out of the game. So if you can look here and then quickly break down what aspects of the game are most important to you and figure out how good those aspects were, that's an effective review, and you will be able to tell how much enjoyment you'll get out of it.
Like the example we gave very early on in the stream is Stardew Valley. That game is wonderful. It's an absolutely fantastic game, but I didn't enjoy playing it.
Yeah, we're trying to get all subjectiveness out of this. We're trying to get this down to as unarguable as possible.
Okay, let's hear the rundown on Xenogears.
Uh, I'm gonna give gameplay an okay, audio a good. I'm gonna give it an okay because I'm hypercritical and I will explain why. Uh, some people will argue, but there's always going to be argument. I mean, there's even argument about science, so.
I
There's
mean, there
math
probably
and people
shouldn't
argue.
be, but
Yeah, no, sorry. The math is right, people. The math is right. Math is always right. Writing is, you know what? It's an okay. The writing was okay.
well, the good news is that there's always the VOD, Nariel.
Yep, yep. And this also goes up on YouTube, so you can check the YouTube channel as well.
We should probably put links to these things down in the description.
Yeah, I'll have to start doing stuff like that, won't I? Well, it's not uploaded yet, though, so there is no link yet. It'll be there.
Yet being the keyword.
Okay, the gameplay, the control was good. I absolutely loved the combo system. It was a fantastic touch to combat. Like, an attack is an attack is an attack, whatever. I'm going to deal damage with this. But then the variability in how you make it look, you could, do your own feel. And then to some extent, there was strategy there. Like, if you're fighting something that's super high defense, you want to do triangle, 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 triangle. Nope, not combo system like Phantasy Star 4, but Phantasy Star 4 was fucking awesome. That's my hidden gem, absolutely must play JRPG. Every single person I've ever talked to that said they like JRPGs, I'm like, have you played Phantasy Star 4? And if they say no, they must play that game.
Yeah, I still got to play that.
The game design is just unmeasurable. So well done. Too good. I could do a whole episode on just me ranting about that game. But the combo system in this is when you attack, it's like a fighter, and you've got weak punch, medium punch, or weak hit, medium hit, hard hit. And then hard is 3 AP, medium is 2 AP, light is 1 AP. And then you would build moves like triangle, 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 square, triangle, square, triangle, square, triangle, things like this as you build up through the game. And as you gain levels and get more AP, you get access to more combos.
So, like, if somebody has a lower level of armor, you would use a heavy attack first to break through that, and then spend the rest of your AP getting more damage out of the entire combo by using lighter attack.
And then you could also, so then you have a manual mode as well. So you have to do the manual mode to find the combo, right? And you're pushing buttons and using your AP, and any leftover AP at the end gets put into a little reservoir that you've got that you can build up. And then you can enter combo mode, where instead of each button being a hit, each input is a combo. And it just spends that stuff, and you just do combo after combo after combo as one big massive hit. So you have to do the freeform mode a lot. And you'll sometimes manually put in combos, and sometimes you won't. Doing little combos, saving some SP. Yeah, we're absolutely on the same level if you're that big of a fan of it. It was my favorite piece of H.P. Lovecraft lore reference until Bloodborne.
Until Miyazaki decided to go all in.
Yeah. Hidetake terrified me and made me feel like less of a human being. PS4 was the first game you finished? Well, congratulations, my friend. That is not an easy game. You did a fantastic job. That game is legit. It will kick your ass. So the RNG in the game, standard JRPG stuff, random encounter battles, which means grinding forever, standard Final Fantasy fare stuff. I'm gonna say okay on the RNG.
Not egregious, but could be less.
Yeah, I know a lot of people aren't a fan of the random. You've entered a battle, and then you just enter battles forever. There's goods and bads to it. I personally like it. I do a lot of grinding. Bugs, good. I'm sure there's some strange skip bugs for speed running and stuff like that, but I've never hit a bug in every playthrough I've ever done of the game, and there's been a few of them, more than a few of them. So, mechanical cohesiveness, okay. The major mechanic of the battle is you jump into a mech, and it gives you a different moveset. I mean, it's a mechanic. They don't really play together. Nothing really plays on itself. Nothing's new. Nothing's original. It's just a standard JRPG. It's 10 when I finished PS4. Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was about that age. Accessibility. I mean, good. There's there's no way you can't control it. It's a JRPG. You move around on the 3D map.
And it didn't have like a very samey color profile or anything like that that might stop you from being able to tell things apart if you're visually impaired.
Yeah. So based on that, I'm gonna change that to a good because I'm 3 to 2. So yeah, seems to make sense. It's good because I guess yeah, there's no bugs. Accessibility kind of throws it off, doesn't it?
Yeah, the accessibility at the time probably wasn't really
It wasn't a
a thing that was
concern,
considered.
but I guess there's nothing for colorblind and stuff like that, and we'll just call it okay. I imagine being colorblind would probably make it really hard to play. You could still play it, but it would just be like gray shapes moving on a screen. I've never known a colorblind person, like completely colorblind. I know there
Well,
are people that are
there's
like that.
several different types.
I
Like
know there's varying degrees like red-green colorblind and a few different ones, but I've never just met like a truly
a,
colorblind person.
a color deficient person.
Yeah, color deficient.
Yeah,
I've
I've met a few.
really.
They do find it very difficult, and contrast is incredibly important.
Do they? They're not a big fan of video games in general, I'd imagine, or
Yeah, most visual media, they just don't get a lot out of it. It's more about getting information if they're using a computer.
yeah, I could see that. Musicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one of them actually is a very accomplished pianist.
Well, the sound effects were good. The punches, the kicks, they were meaty, they were beefy. I enjoyed doing them, and they had lots of good, screams and shouts while they're doing their different combos and stuff. It kind of sounded like you were playing a fighting game when you were in combat. Very similar
Solid.
sound. The voice acting is okay. I think I remember there being voice acting. It was in that era. It should have had it. It might not have, because they did run out of money.
And see, like that's at the point where like you're running out of available resources to be able to do the thing,
Yeah.
but the rest of the game is solid.
Yeah, I think the voice act, it's okay or bad. I'd have to play again to do that one. But musical score, it's old Squaresoft. It's good. It's good. You can listen to it as a soundtrack. I just did a Chrono Trigger playthrough on here. I don't think I saved all the video, unfortunately. I tried, but and beautiful soundtrack in that one. Video consistent style. I'm gonna give it an okay. It was consistent enough, but it was very early. It was basically the first voxel game, essentially.
Interesting.
You could,
So the transitions between areas were fine, but somewhat jarring.
yeah, like you could move the camera onto the 4 degrees all the way around and see things from different angles and walk around and into them, but things would disappear and cut in and out and didn't move quite right. I guess that would make it bad for the animation as well. I guess that's animation more than anything, is that part. The moving of the camera is really the biggest issue of it, with things cutting in and out. It made it kind of hard to control. It was almost so bad at times. And it's not really a fault of the game as much as the technology, the era, trying to implement that technology in that era, because this is PS1.
Yeah, that's fair.
The rest of it was like sprites moving around in the voxel areas. It was quite well done on that side. But the animation of the moving and everything. I'm gonna
But
give it an okay.
as far as consistent style goes, like the art style
Yeah, I
made
mean everything was always
sense.
good. I mean it's a SquareSoft game, so
Oh yeah, so it's probably very consistent.
yeah. And performance was good despite what it was. PS1 camera were a little bit off-putting, yeah. That's not so much the PS1 as much as it is that era of game design and game development. Yeah, it's you only have so much tech to work with.
Well, and the techniques for like free look camera, for instance, weren't really a widely adopted thing. I remember when I think it was one of the original Alien versus Predator games, was one of the first games to actually leverage the DualShock 2 for camera control, and it was the first to use the modern layout of left stick controls your movement, right stick controls your camera, and it was panned like almost universally at first, and now that's just our standard method of control. And yes, Legend of Dragoon is fantastic. I love that game.
Uh, but the writing, and I gave the writing an okay, and a lot of people are gonna argue with me on it. But the storyline is okay, and it's sad that the storyline is okay. It really, really, really is. It's so sad because it
And
had
that's
so
unexpected for
much
a
potential.
Squaresoft game.
And it's really, really, really good story until you get to the last disc where they went, "Oh, we're out of money. Quick, finish it." And it just kind of goes, and just drops off right there. If you get to the very, very, very end of the game, and then suddenly you fight me and it's over. I'm the last boss in the game.
And it just kind of ends, just kind of stops.
Yeah, and it doesn't really, really, really get into it. But the beginning is so good. It uses a lot of Freudian thought and theory in the writing of its game.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, the person you're chasing the entire game is named Id. That's all I'll say. It's worth the playthrough. It's worth at least one playthrough for sure. Very, very good game. If you like Phantasy Star 4 and you like everything else that I've been saying about JRPGs, Xenogears is one you should play at least once. It deserves the playthrough. The characters were good. The characters were Squaresoft characters.
So very much the sort of character that's written in such a way that you get emotionally invested in these characters.
I've played it, I think, probably 7 or 8 times now. I set up a little Dropbox with an emulator so that if I'm ever bored, I can just log into the Dropbox and it's got all my saves on it, and I can just continue my save and hit save and close the Dropbox and log out of it when I'm done, and then just log in and continue my save anywhere I want. And world building, okay, which is sad because it could have been so much, and it's the same problem that the storyline had. It's just a money problem. They spent all of their budget early on, and then Squaresoft started going bankrupt.
That's a shame, because Squaresoft made some truly incredible games in their day.
Yeah, it was actually the movie that they did that bankrupted them. Spirits Within.
That doesn't surprise me, really.
They spent a shit ton of money on that movie. Just an absolute shit ton of money on that movie. And nobody went to it. And it's a fantastic movie. And you look at the animation quality, and you look at the year that it came out, and you're just like, what?
Yeah, yeah. The animation in that film was just mind-blowingly good.
It was more than 10 years ahead of its time in quality.
Easily.
It was a long time
Easily.
before we ever saw anyone do anything like it again. With PS4, my goal was to be faster, better every time. Ended up finishing the game at level 39. Oh, in which game? Phantasy Star 4? Yeah, yeah. That's a low level to do it at. That's a tough one. You're using a lot of stuff that we can't talk about because spoilers.
Because I haven't played it yet, and I need to go play it.
Yeah, the it even implements play conditioning.
How so? Or is it spoilers?
Spoilers.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, my last playthrough of Legend of Dragoon was my big low level one. Unfortunately, it crashed, and I couldn't continue that game. But I went to check a guide to make sure I didn't forget anything on the playthrough. And while going through, I was like, you see, they recommended like level 50 or something for the boss, and I was like level 25. I'd already killed it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's pretty much the whole time. We got 3 games out, but I'm pretty happy. What do you guys think? Let's hear some comments from the chat on what you think of the game review system itself.
Well, while we're waiting for comments to roll in, I have to say I am pretty happy with the way that we've sort of set this up. I think maybe the way that we end up doing the reviews themselves, we end up talking a lot about the details initially. So maybe we should start working backwards. Like maybe do our detailed thoughts on, say, the performance and the animation and all of the other subcategories of video, and then draw our conclusion from that rather than trying to give a high level first and then justify it after.
I fully agree. Write it forward, read it forwards, write it backwards.
I agree
Exactly.
with that.
Yeah, we got 3 games out today. We did Doom 2016 initially. Then we moved over to Dark Cloud, I believe it's called.
That's
And then
correct.
at the end here, we just handled Xenogears. The short story, as far as Doom is concerned, is go play it. It's fantastic.
It is a transcendent game, as I call it. It's so good that if you don't like shooters, you will like Doom. It is a must play. Yes, soundtrack is not just mental, it's also fucking metal.
Yes.
Metal! That hurt.
Yeah, you should probably go easy on that. At least till your throat's better. Yeah, Mick Gordon knocked that game out of the park, and he did great work on the newer Wolfensteins as well. I believe he's also doing the soundtrack for Doom Eternal, which I'm very excited for. What other recent projects has he worked on? Nothing springing to mind. He's just been working with id and Machine Games quite a bit recently.
Speaking of a bit of metal, that's a good time to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think we've accomplished our goal here. We have identified one issue with how we were writing the reviews themselves. We've tried out our template on a couple of different games, all from fairly different ages and in varying degrees of success at what they were trying to do. I think our review system works. I think we did it.
Next week, we'll likely be digging. We may have some better ideas by then, but we'll likely be digging into some definitions of what makes a genre. So when you talk about a shooter game, or an RPG game, or an adventure game, what makes it a shooter game? What defines it as a shooter game? This
And
is
as part of that, like what a core gameplay loop for the example genre would be, because that's often what it comes down to.
yeah, that's why you want to isolate exactly what makes that game, so that the core gameplay loop can be built around what that game is, and we can isolate and focus on how to really design and develop a good shooter this way. Also, this is sort of relevant to, I was talking to somebody who absolutely loved Destiny 2, and I was like, oh yeah, it's a good game, it's not a great shooter. And they're like, what? It's a great
And
game. I was like, yeah, I said it's a good game. It's just not a good shooter. No, I'm not saying it's a
which
bad
is
game.
which is my opinion exactly on Destiny 2. I've spent quite a bit of time playing that game, and I thoroughly enjoy it, but it's not a great shooter. It's okay.
Yeah, it's the RPG. So I went on to Google and I looked up, is Destiny 2 a good shooter? And everything that I was reading online from like professional places was saying it's a great shooter because of all these RPG elements. That makes it a
Does
good
not
RPG. That doesn't make it a good shooter. It's a good RPG that way. Just because it has shooting elements doesn't mean it's a good shooter.
exactly, Zariana. Destiny 2 is a loot and shoot, light on the shoot.
Exactly. A schluter.
Yeah, that's an excellent title for the genre of Borderlands as well. Schlooters.
I like this term. This is what I'm going to call them from now on. And you know what? I don't mind a good schluter.
Yeah, as it turns out, they're quite a bit of fun. All right. I guess that wraps our show up for today. Like we said, next week we're going to be going over what makes a game, what makes it part of the genre that it is part of, and we hope to see you all then.
Thanks for joining Games by Design. I'm Deus.
I'm Rage.
And I'm Pseudo.
Y'all have a good evening.